members on the platform, the colleagues, the Secretary of Parliament, and all the support staff. The speaker made to understand that the speaker is also on the line. You are welcomed. And the team from Auditor General's SA. Can you close the Co-Chair, can you close the mic, please? Can you mute the mic, Chair? Okay. The agenda is here on the platform. I am really on the marathon because we have allocated 1 hour for this session, and 9 o'clock we must start with the second session of our program for today. Having said that, can we find out if there are any apologies, Cindy? Cindy, do we have any apologies?
Chairperson.
Yes.
Good morning. It's Singh here. This is not Cindy. Good morning to you, the speaker, and everybody that's on the platform. I have a subcommittee on rules at 9:30, so I'll have to join that meeting at 9:30 and come back possibly after that meeting. Thank you.
Okay, Honorable Brataseth.
Yes, Chairperson. I also have another competing meeting at 10 o'clock, but I will try and stay connected as long as possible. I just wanted to ask one question, Chair. I did send Cindy an email last night. On the 14th, the meeting that was cancelled, we were going to be discussing the DPWI report on the restoration of Parliament after the fire. That was on the schedule for last week. I don't see it as one of the documents for today, so I just want to get clarity on. I did ask Cindy for that document so that we could go through that. Thanks a lot.
Okay, I think that will be entertained when you to the agenda. If you want, you are proposing that, or you're questioning why is it not part of the agenda. But for now, we're still on the apologies. Honorable Matho. Yes. Honorable Matho.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am. I see your hand is up.
Yes, madam. I wanted to inform the chairperson that I'm going to consult the doctor. I've got a little bit of a flu. I will leave at 10 o'clock.
At what time, 10?
Yes, 10 or half past 10, I will leave.
Okay. I think members, we can see that members have multiple commitments. And can I confirm with Cindy about other apologies? Have you received any apology, Cindy?
Good morning, Chair. Sorry, I was struggling to unmute. No, we haven't received any other apologies.
Okay.
And I will respond to Mr. Brataseth's email just now.
Oh, okay. There's also a question that comes from Mr. Brataseth. We are on that item now, or on the adoption of the...
Sorry, Chair.
Yes, Honorable Khai.
Sorry, I'm driving to the doctor. I'll send a message to Cindy. I'm surprised that she says there's no other apologies there.
Oh, okay. Okay, it's fine. But you will rejoin after your consultation, eh?
Yes, indeed.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Honorable Khai. Cindy, we are on the adoption. And there's a question that came from Honorable Brataseth team.
Yes, Chairperson. The item Mr. Brataseth is referring to is the update we were due to receive from the Secretary of Parliament following Parliament's engagements with DPWI. the DG of BWI and the DG of Treasury. That item has been rescheduled as per previous communication to the committee to next week to allow us to just deal with the annual report in this meeting. But the item is still on our program. It is just, it has been rescheduled to next week, but it is on the program that we shared with members last week, the revised program.
Thank you very much. Co-chairperson.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think also maybe Cindy should indicate the apology from the AG.
Oh, okay.
Apologies. Yes, we received an apology from the AG, who has their roadshow this week, and the team from the Auditor General of SA will also leave after their session to join the AG on the roadshow.
And who's leading the AG's office?
It is Ms. Sharon Adams, who heads the regional office.
Okay. Maybe before I hand over to Adams, I don't know if because I think as a way of doing things and observing protocol, I will request the Secretary to Parliament, the Speaker, if she wants to have something, or she will reserve the comments for the next session. Honorable Speaker. Yes, Co-Chairperson.
Can I propose that the Executive Authority introduces the annual report, which was tabled on the 31st of August, and then we then have the Auditor General after the Executive Authority has presented the report.
I think, Co-Chairperson, there are two sessions. This session is specifically for the AG, and then for the annual report is the second session, where obviously we're going to give the speaker an opportunity to speak. So I just wanted to check, as we are dealing with this one now, does she want to check with her if she will
recording in progress.
Thank you for that, Honorable Co-Chair. Honorable Speaker, do you want to have a bite now? But not on the
Good morning.
Morning,
Honorable Chairpersons, and good morning to the members of the committee. Honorable Chair, I would rather reserve my comments for later when we have our second session where we will be presenting the annual report. For now, we'll be listening to the presentation by the AG's office.
Thank you so much.
If you agree.
I do.
Thank you very much.
Honorable Speaker, thank you. Can I now hand over to the AG's team to go on with the presentation?
Perfect. Good morning, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Chair and Honorable Co-Chair, and Honorable members of the committee, also the Secretary of Parliament, and all protocol observed. So my name is, as you know, Sharon Adams. I'm the Head of Portfolio for the Free State, Northern Cape and the Western Cape Business Unit, and I will be presenting on the audit outcomes of Parliament of the Republic of South Africa. We also thought, Chair, we'll use this opportunity that we have also just to give some insights of some of the work that we've done at the legislatures in the provinces. So it will just be a high-level sharing. But the presentation has been shared before. So if I can immediately go over to this, the slide on the accountability ecosystem. And as the AG is one of the key things that we are driving, we're driving the culture shift within the public sector. And we do believe, as part of this accountability ecosystem, that is so critical in driving the culture shift in the public sector, that first of all, that we identify the key role players part of this accountability ecosystem. And then secondly, After identifying the role players, we are clear what their roles and responsibilities are. And you'd notice specifically from this slide, looking at the key role players as we start with the official senior managers that has an oversight process as part of the ecosystem. And a lot of the roles and responsibility are clearly depicted in the legislation of what their roles and responsibilities are. Then we come to the accounting officer, also roles and responsibility in the FAMPLA clearly stipulated, and all the executive authority having a specific roles and responsibility. As AGSA, what we've also further looked at as part of this accountability ecosystem, we've got specific coordinating ministries that plays a crucial role from an oversight perspective, and Parliament and legislature. So we actually for this year, and I will share a bit about it, did a bit of work where we basically just looked high level from an oversight perspective, the oversight model, and what are some of the lessons from there that we can share with this committee, and we will go into that. Then important that in terms of the active citizenry, important the role that the citizens play, and ultimately us as the AGSA making sure by the work that we do that we provide the appropriate insights. And we know when we've got the appropriate insights, we will be able to influence based on the insights that we give. And ultimately, as in terms of our amended powers, in terms of the public audit act, when it comes to the material irregularity, and we are very resolute when it comes to enforcement, where we've raised these material irregularities. But that's just a high-level overview that I just wanted to give in terms of the key role plays in the accountability ecosystem. The next set of slides will basically deal with the audit outcomes of Parliament. And we noticed over the past number of years, and I think for the last 3 years, we've analyzed here, Parliament sustained the clean audit outcome over the last number of years. And I think they are commended. And when we specifically look at an audit, there's 5 areas that we look at. The first part is the opinion on the financial statement. Secondly, also, is there any material findings on compliance to law and regulation? Thirdly, is there any material findings when it comes to performance information? And based on that, is there any internal control deficiencies that we've identified? And also, if there's any material irregularity that we've issued, would also comply of the audit report. But Parliament once again then received the unqualified report without any findings for the year under review. The next part, we thought it was just important to highlight in terms of from a financial management and what are some of the controls in place when it comes to the area of financial management. And you'd notice in a majority of the cases when it comes to financial controls embedded in Parliament, majority of the items that we've got from the record keeping to compliance to laws to regulation, processing and reconciliation control is in green. And the one that we've got just of a bit concern is the one on the regular reporting. And that mainly had to do with 2 misstatements that we did find in the one case relating to post-retirement benefits, and specifically when it came to the long service award in terms of the members' gratuity, how that was dealt with. So we did view that from a technical nature in terms of the accounting standards. So that is just something that we said Parliament must just give something that attention to going forward. And the other one that we've also just looked at in terms of the recent earlier that happened in terms of the fire that occurred at Parliament. So there was definitely certain assets in terms of the quantification that we then had to look at. But I think important to note the fact that Parliament has proper record keeping relating to the asset management. It was then not difficult then to do this quantification of the assets that was then involved in the fire for us then to make those considerations as auditors, linking it back to our audit opinion. The next slide basically deal with the performance information, and I think importantly here, and for us why this is critically important, because it links back to the service delivery, what Parliament has indicated. These are the things that we are going to deliver, and this is how we have delivered on what we've set ourselves out to do. So for the year under review, as depicted in our report, there was a number of key indicators that we've audited, and we can indicate based on the 2 programs that we've selected, Program 1 and Program 2 on legislation and oversight, and the number of indicators that we've audited, there was no material findings that we've identified, both when it came to the usefulness of the findings, which relates basically to how the indicators were set up in the first place, and is it basically measurable indicators, and the consistency of the reporting. And the second part that we've looked at was on the reliability of the information, and also for the year under review, we did not find any material findings. If I can go over to the next area, which is on the irregular expenditure compliance to laws and regulation, and we've identified no major material findings in the area of compliance laws and regulations. But one of the things that we just wanted to note is also disclosed in the financial statements of Parliament was the increase on the irregular expenditure compared from the prior year, where there was zero irregular expenditure, increased to 2.1 million. And that mainly related to an overpayment that has been made to a political party that is still under investigation. So we thought that information is depicted in the annual financial statements that we just wanted to highlight it. The next slide, basically, what we then did for the current year, we also looked as AGSA, one of the key things that we've looked at, and one of our strategic intent is to make an impact on the lived realities of the ordinary citizens. And that is one of our strategic intent that we are driving. And important for the lived experience for Parliament, what we were specifically looking at, because we knew it would be important in terms of the committees that normally, and that is what Parliament's one of the key business in terms of holding people to account at the various committees that is established. And so what the team basically did from this perspective was just to see, based on the workings of the committee and also polling some of the ministers to account, and the follow-up process then happens when this accountability session happens. So I think important to note, we specifically look at the one on water and sanitation, and there was, I think, important for us just some high-level important value-added comments that we wanted just to give back in terms of how the model worked relating to that. The first part I think that we wanted to look at was in terms of the whole oversight process, because we know to these committees, the annual performance plan does come for the input and the approval. And I think what we've noticed that the committees do give inputs in terms of the enhancement of certain targets and indicators, but a lot of time that comes to the committee after the process has already been concluded and finalized. So those changes that's been raised normally from the committee side is not always taken into the account. The second part that we've also just looked at, we've also just looked from a mechanism, from an oversight perspective, when these specific resolutions made by the committee, how vigorously are these resolutions followed up? And we did discover that in not in all cases where specific resolutions was made, that these things are followed up. And hence, as a result of that, it could be areas of key service delivery concerns, maybe to the citizens on the ground. So if continuous follow-ups are not made and people are held to account, it could result that those same issues of the prior year could persist in going forward. So this was more from a value-added perspective that we just wanted to give some inputs in terms of the value-added work that we look at that comes to the lived reality of the citizens. The next slide deals with the financial health of Parliament. And I think in previous years also we had quite extensive debate, because if you look at the position statement, what we used to call a balance sheet of Parliament, we would notice there the long-term liabilities exceeds the asset, and mainly due to the post-retirement benefits that is sitting in there for the members of Parliament. I think overall, if you look at the current assets and liabilities of Parliament, there's no major concern, but we do believe we've highlighted the whole issue about the long-term assets in exceeding the current liabilities, mainly because of the post-retirement benefits. But based on our assessment, I think Parliament does have sufficient cash reserves in place, and we've also further highlighted just the average number of days that they take to pay the creditors, on average about 62 days. And then in total, there's about 52,000 of fruitless and wasteful expenditure that Parliament has disclosed. So that's just one of the ones that I wanted to highlight. The last slide basically deals with the root causes and the commitments and recommendations. And I think in a nutshell, based on what we've raised in terms of the findings, first of all, emanated in terms of the processing controls or the regular reporting when it comes to the financial statements. So that is one of the things that we said should be getting the attention, and we've just raised that in terms of some of the key recommendations. Secondly, also it relates to the process in terms of the fire that happened and of course the access to this building. So we said that whole process in terms of the value of the asset that has been destroyed should then be dealt with very swiftly in that regard from a process perspective. Then we also basically recommending from the executive authority perspective that any action plans that has been put in place, both from the internal and external audit findings, that there should be a feedback mechanism in place to provide that feedback then in this regard relating to the action plans. The next set of slides, as I mentioned at the beginning, so I will very swiftly go through these slides, Honorable Chair. It relates to the legislature sector. So we thought, because Parliament also has a role from an oversight perspective of the legislatures, we thought it would be important just to provide this feedback. As we've noticed in terms overall for the audit outcome, we do see an improvement looking from 1920 to 2021, quite a bit of Parliament and the legislatures in an unqualified space without findings, but we still find some of them in the legislatures in an unqualified with findings, mainly due to either compliance to laws and regulation or the area of predetermined objective. There's still challenges. But I think it is noted that Parliament Gauteng in Mpumalanga, Western Cape, and then also the Eastern Cape that has improved in the current year when it came to the audit outcome. I think to notice also there's nobody here in the qualified zone or adverse or restrained zone as part of the legislatures and Parliament. If we can go over to the next slide. So the work that we've done here specifically relating to the service delivery. So you would notice there in terms of the quality of performance information, there's a number that had some findings, which was corrected afterwards. So only one legislature then basically still remaining with findings, which was Limpopo, when it came to the area of the reliability of the information. Further on, what we've also looked at, similar to what we've done in Parliament, we've looked at the legislatures where we've specifically looked at the oversight model and how the oversight model operates was the one part. Then we also similarly looked at from an APP perspective when these matters come to the table of the legislatures, how is the oversight process happening, and also in terms of the quarterly report assessment. Then we've also looked up at the follow-up and the robust follow-up of the resolution. And I think similar what we found here with a number of legislatures, when it comes to the resolutions and the follow-through of resolution and the mechanism in place to actually follow up resolutions, that was a key challenge across a lot of legislature. And I think the key reason why we're raising that specifically in the area where there's things impacting service delivery or where specific departments or entities had to come in account either to the portfolio committees or to the SCOBA within the various legislatures, and this specific follow-up throughs does not happen. It can then result on year, we're raising the same thing and we're talking about the same thing, and then the accountability ecosystem, where each role player is part of that accountability ecosystem, does not perform their roles and responsibility, definitely have an impact. I think noting when we were looking specific to the APPs, we noted that with legislatures, there is a research team that is in place, and in majority of the cases, those research teams do review those APPs and provide inputs. But we are just concerned about the feedback mechanism that happens then when those inputs are given and how those inputs are then taken into account in the APP. Or the other thing also what we know from the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, they've got also a role that they've played to review this annual performance plan of the various departments from a national perspective. So it'd be important that that feedback loop even happen to the members of Parliament of those reviews that have done to make sure that those things then are embedded and then included. And then lastly, the key thing that we wanted also just to highlight is the whole just the follow-up of resolution and the current mechanism that's in place, that there is no proper follow-up of resolution, or there's no system of control in place when it comes to resolutions being made and how these resolutions are being followed through and being actioned. The last two slides that I will present is on the extended powers that the AGSA have. So we started with the implementation of this since 1819, and there's quite a number across the board that we've issued across provincial, national municipalities that we've issued the material irregularity. And I think important to note in terms of from the AGSA side, so when we issue this material irregularities, we want accounting officers to take action. We want consequence management to happen. We want the monies to recover. But as the process unfolds, there is challenges with the process that sometimes we have to refer material irregularities to another body for investigation. There's a couple of them that we've done so. Also, in certain cases where recommendations has been given for implementation and these things are not done, then we give further recommendations in the audit report where we are very clear and specific 1, 2, 3, 4 must be done to address this matter. And if those recommendations are not implemented, the AGSA goes to the next step for remedial action. And ultimately, if that does not happen, then we will go over to the area of certificate of debt. But important to note that if we get to that stage of certificate of debt, it is a case that all the role players that's part of this accountability ecosystem is not playing their roles and responsibility. And hence, it's so critically important for us as the various members of the various honorable members of the various committees of Parliament, that this oversight role is critically important. And so in terms of the next steps, in terms of the roles and responsibility, and we are very clear in terms of the accounting authorities, their roles and responsibility, and making sure that these matters get their attention and it's addressed swiftly and quickly. And from our perspective, AGSA, we will continuously follow up on these matters where action has been taken or no appropriate action has been taken. Similarly, we do those rigorous follow-up with those public bodies where they're basically investigating certain things that we've referred to them for further action. Then in terms of, I think the key thing that I wanted just to highlight from an oversight perspective, important to note, when a material irregularity is raised, it's part of the annual, included in the audit report. So important as part of the oversight mechanism, when that is then noticed in any of the audit report of any department entity, it's probably important that those robust conversations must occur to make sure that what they've done about the material irregularity was appropriate action taken relating to the material irregularity to date, and also the continuous follow-up that needs to happen in this regard, so that we don't get to a point of either the remedial action or a certificate of debt. Because if each role player as part of this accountability ecosystem does their part, then the system should then work effectively and efficiently. I can then indicate for the Parliament and the legislatures that we haven't issued any material irregularities relating to any legislature or Parliament. So, Honourable Chair, that is the part of my presentation. So we are open for any comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members will now invite you to make observations, comments, and recommendations. Questions, of course, if there are any. I want to speak about the key role players that you've identified. You also mentioned active citizenry, and I want to know, how does your work as the AG find expression in citizens, and whether you get any feedback? But coupled to that, what is your relationship with Chapter 9 institutions? because we normally get various reports, on certain findings. But you may find that in terms of what the Auditor General has advised, or the work that the Auditor General has provided in certain departments, you find that the reports will always be quiet about your findings. So I want to know, what is your relationship with Chapter 9 institutions? And also, how does your work find expression in citizens? And if you do get feedback from citizens, what do you do about it? Members, I will now open the platform. If there are any hands, I see the hand of Member Singh.
Thank you, Chairperson. And once again, good morning to everybody. Thank you for the presentation by the AG. I just needed some clarity if they've expressed an opinion on the internal audit unit in Parliament. Are you satisfied with the functioning of the internal audit unit? And secondly, I think your finding was unqualified with no findings. I stand to correction. But I note that there are recommendations and concerns. So do these recommendations and concerns not count as findings? Also on the question of performance against targets, I mean, this is something for every department and even Parliament we look at. You've done 2 administration, legislation and oversight, and you've got the performance against targets 100%. I think perhaps we as a committee will have to check what Parliament itself said when they were reporting to us on these respective targets. And the question on the overpayment to a political party, do you know whether anything has been done in that regard? And lastly, the APP proposal. I see you are making proposals on the APP. That before tabling by the minister, it should come to the committee. Is this some general kind of comment that you make with other departments as well? Or are you, I know you confined to this particular audit, but generally is the Office of the Auditor General going to make that kind of recommendation to other departments and the APPs? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Singh. I don't see any hands. Yes, my other comment was going to be around the overpayment to political parties as well. I'm not sure at what point will we get details and what has been done about that. But the other concerning issue, members, is the statement regarding to committees that are unable to make follow-ups on their previous minutes. Because once you open a matter, there should be a closure. So it's something that we really need to flag, maybe with whips of committees, and it will also be advisable that the office also provides us with a list of committees that have failed in that regard. I'm trying to check. I see the hand of Umpile, and Member Umpile, then we can then move and allow the AG to give us responses. Umpile? I'm unable to switch on my video. I don't know why. I keep on seeing the presentation on my screen, so I'm not sure. How do I go about?
Chair, your video is on. We're just seeing the car.
Really?
Yes.
Do you see me now?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Okay. Member Warube, are you speaking, or let's allow Member Maute? Umpile.
Yes, good morning, Chair, and then good morning to the colleagues and the AG. I want to welcome the presentation by the AG, but I've just got a few questions. AG, I see on your slide number 7 rather, you've raised some concerns on the audit of financial statements. One is that the management did not value their provision for long service awards, and then the second one is the management's quantification of assets destroyed in the fire. How old is this information? Are we saying even at this point, we still don't have quantification of the assets that are destroyed by the fire? That will be my first question. My next question goes to slide number 8, yeah, which indicates that there's 2.1 million irregular expenditure for the financial year 21-22. Can we get more information on this one? Where does it emanate from? And what is Parliament going to do to rectify this issue? And then going down to material irregularities, I see that there's a few that are identified on slide 17. And of course, you've got next steps and responsibilities, but can we understand where are these coming from and what has Parliament done so far to address these issues? That will be all from my side for now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, AG's office, please respond.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, for the question. So to respond maybe to the first one on the active citizenry and how do we make sure from AGSA if we get feedback. So what we've done, we've got relationship with some of the civil society organizations, and as part of our audit process, when we do risk assessment processes and there is civil society organization, we've got that relationship with them and contact, and inputs that they normally give to us, we do take as part of our risk assessment processes. So that is something actively as AGSA we started to do, Chair, relating to the citizens and specifically relating to civil society organizations. There is also instances, for example, where various citizens would raise specific matters with us at various provinces or entities, and that normally we would also take that information and also communicate with them in this regard when those things does happen, Chair. The other one on the relationship with the Chapter 9 institutions, so definitely there is relationship with Chapter 9 institutions, but some of them actually, we've got some MOAs in place in terms of roles and responsibilities, and also in cases when we've referred information and how that process will flow. But we can most probably give some more information to the committee in writing in that regard, maybe to expand on it much better in these instances. The next one on the area of the unqualified audit opinion and the recommendation. So 100% correct, Parliament had an unqualified audit opinion for the year under review, and no material findings that we've reported. So some of the one finding that we had relating to the long service award, so it was a calculation of a technical nature that ultimately the financial statements was fairly presented in that regard, and hence we didn't consider it as a material non-compliance when we were making the assessment. So it's literally just in terms of the oversight and review of financial statements relating to that part. The other part on the quantification of the assets, so I think it would be important then when Parliament do their part just to give further feedback. But at that point in time, when we were still busy with the audit, which is that ended end of June, that was the challenge at that point in time. So it could be up to date. There was some further work that they've done that they can provide input from their perspective. Then the other one was on the overpayment. So at the time when we concluded the audit, the follow-up did not happen yet, but I'm sure Parliament would be in a best position place then to respond to that and indicate what subsequently has happened relating to that specific matter. The one noted in terms of the APPs and the proposal, so yes, based on the value-added work that we've done, we also communicating to the other departments, entities that's impacted, and specifically on the Department of Monitoring Evaluation, because they also do an APP review that we make sure that how do we close the loop to actually share this information with the members of Parliament, which is valuable information based on the work that they are doing. I'm with on the information of the resolutions and the follow-up of that in terms of the mechanism in place, and we can be able to provide further feedback in terms of the specific committees that we've looked at and where the challenges was in this regard. So, Chair, we will also be able to provide that in writing. Then in terms of what the honourable member raised in terms of the slide 7, and definitely I think I've touched on that in terms of what it relates to and the impact, but it will be important then from Parliament side just to get further information, similarly from slide 7 and 8 on the amount of irregular expenditure that has been disclosed. The last question, Chair, that I'm going to respond to relates to the MI process and basically what the reason for this. So I can conclude that there was no material irregularities issued for Parliament or legislatures for the period. But the reason why we just wanted to flag that slide from an oversight perspective, because we know as members of this committee, also you sit on other committees maybe that you're a member of or that you chair. We thought it was just important for us in terms of that oversight role and that mechanism that you normally play in terms of your individual committee work when it comes to material irregularities that we place in other departments or entities, that a note needs to be taken in terms of that robust follow-up as part of this chain of accountability ecosystem that each key role player then plays their role. So Chair, I hope I've adequately responded to the questions that has been raised. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I now invite the speaker if there are any comments or observations that you would like to make before I officially let you go? Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, we have noted the issues raised by the Office of the Auditor General, and I am particularly interested in the issue of quantification of assets, the non-quantification of assets which were destroyed by fire. And in my understanding, the 2.6 irregular expenditure is not necessarily an irregular expenditure of the National Assembly or Parliament. However, in the course of the discussions, once we have presented our annual report, I am sure members would want us to interact and engage on some of the matters raised by the Auditor General. But just to say, Chair, that we have noted the issues and we will go through the report. And if needs be, we will further engage with the Office of the Auditor General for purposes of seeking clarity on some of the matters raised. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much from the AG's office. You have requested that you would want to be excused at 9. I think we are doing well in terms of time. Thank you very much. This is work in progress. I have reservations on how the Auditor General's office work, but audit. I have reservations, but it's a discussion for another day. But thank you very much for availing yourselves. Can we move to the next agenda item? You are excused.
Thank you, Chair, so much. I know Kalpima Abrams, she will be staying in the meeting from our office. So if there's any further maybe comments or questions. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Can I invite the Secretary to Parliament to brief us on the performance in the 2021-2022 financial year? Maybe before I do that, to invite you, Speaker, to first maybe set the tone and hand over to the Secretary of Parliament.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairpersons. And thank you to the all members of the committee, honorable members, for the invite for us to come and brief you on the performance of Parliament. I should say that I don't know what I expected from the first session, but I would have expected that the first session would give detail on problematic areas, if there are any, with regards to our finances, or even to affirm us where they believe we're doing well. However, I realize that now I'm not sure, maybe it is us here in Parliament who invited the Office of the Auditor General before they were quite ready to present a full report, or maybe the full report will be given to us behind the scenes, I don't know. But it's just an observation which I have made, honorable members. Co-chairpersons and chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, honorable members of the Joint Standing Committee, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We thank you for the opportunity to present an account of the performance of our Parliament for the 2021-2022 financial year. This is quite important for us as the legislature, Madam Chair, given Parliament's own role in holding the rest of the state accountable, and therefore the need to be exemplary in accounting for our own performance as a national legislature, and by extension, the legislative sector as a whole. We present the 2021 annual report as a complete account for the institutional and financial performance of the institution during the year under review. As members are aware, the performance of this institution for 2021-2022 is against a unique background necessitated by the unprecedented impact of COVID-19 pandemic, and later the fire disaster that left the physical infrastructure of the institution completely destroyed and compromised. Although these disruptions had a major impact on the ability of Parliament to function effectively, the report we present today will also demonstrate that the institution was able to adapt its operations, showed great institutional resilience, and ensured that both the mandate and annual performance targets of the institution are fulfilled and achieved. Naturally, Chair, the report highlights a number of lessons for the ability of the institution to function effectively in the context of being tested and the weaknesses amid risks that the institution was exposed to from both the COVID-19 and the fire disaster. We hope that these lessons, as difficult as they were, have now created a baseline from which the organization must now plan for its future performance, including its capacity to reposition itself for the long-term implications of the disruption. As the executive authority, we are grateful to our accounting officer, Mr. Xolile George, for having landed into his role on both feet, understanding very quickly the unique challenges of the period of his arrival and quickly stabilizing the institution under very challenging circumstances. With your permission, therefore, Chair, may I now, if you allow me, hand over to him and his executive team to present the annual report 2021-22 to the Joint Standing Committee on Financial Management of Parliament. I thank you, Chair. I thank you, Chair. Are you there, Chair?
Yeah, Mr. Xolile George is welcome. Madam Speaker. To set the tone, he will then come and take us through the formal presentation. You're welcome, Mr. Xolile George, Secretary to Parliament.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good morning to the co-chairperson, the members of the committee, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Chairperson, as well as my colleagues who are present in the platform. Thank you very much also for affording us to reinforce the message that the Honorable Speaker has outlined in appreciating the year under review, a year where the execution of our work was informed by many factors. Less of these factors has been the inadequacy of the climate within which our work had to be executed. Factors such as COVID-19 lockdown, and more difficult, the question of the fire that engulfed Parliament on the 2nd of January, almost at the tail end of the quarter under review. Nevertheless, the institution as presented by AG this morning has operated, albeit under the most difficult conditions, and realized its objective. I think it is a sign of the start of resilience, and we will endeavor to maintain that commitment in terms of our execution. Our work, Chairperson, will be more easier given the fact that AG has broadly outlined the assessment of the audit, that they have done, as well as the institutional performance that we will be sharing with the committee. I would like to indicate, Chairperson, that in terms of part 1 of the presentation, I would ask the head of performance and reporting to assist in presenting that part. And with your permission on the financial management, I will ask the acting CFO to cover that part. The committee would recall that when we presented the first quarter of this current financial year, and we also presented the draft APP that we will be looking at in the next financial year, we made reflections on some of the areas that would require us to rethink our approach to implementing the organizational strategy, building on the 2019-2024 Parliament's priority area, and based on those priority areas, be able to measure across the board how are we executing on all the key pillars that Parliament has outlined. And I think it will be a function of us maturing our performance reporting. It will also be a function of us improving on the shifts we would want to see to take the organization to a much more qualitative measurement of its own performance, and also migrate the organization to a higher trajectory of measuring outcomes and impacts, whilst at the same time balancing the transactional reporting aspects of our work in terms of activities, in terms of adherence to processes, so that we are able to respond to the broader imperatives of Parliament's work in terms of lawmaking, oversight, as well as public participation in the main. So it will be a function of us gradually improving, coming back to the committee, but building on the good work that we will be sharing with the committee today. On the areas raised about the work around us classifying our assets that could still be salvaged from the fire damaged buildings of the old assembly and the new assembly, I would like to indicate to the committee that we have now received confirmation that we can start moving into those damaged buildings. And in a matter of 2 weeks, we would have worked out in terms of how we start the asset verification work on those damaged buildings. And based on the timeline of completing that, we would hopefully give an update to the committee at its subsequent sessions that would be convening us. So we will be doing that work and also ensure that we also focus on improving the security environment in which we operate, to make sure that all matters that have been raised, we attend to them as a matter of urgency. So on that high-level summary of our work, Chairperson, allow me to ask the head of the performance to quickly give a highlight of the key achievement on the 12 targets that Auditor General has confirmed we have executed around member support services. And we will also reflect on what we will be doing on those recoveries of the overpayments made to political parties. We have had a discussion internally, and we have proposals on how we will engage those political parties in a manner that will allow us to phase in the recovery around those matters where we might have not executed it properly. And we would also deal with those areas that are raised about benefits that AG has raised on how we would improve our interpretation of GRAP 25 in terms of ensuring that we don't have those matters going forward. So through you, Chairperson, allow me to ask the head of performance to quickly summarize the highlights around that and be followed immediately by the acting CFO on the finances. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Good morning to the Speaker of Parliament, Secretary of Parliament, co-chairs of the Joint Standing Committee, honourable members of the committee, and other officials. There will be certain slides where I think it would be repetition of information from the AG's information, so I may skip through that. So the key thing I want to highlight is that the institutional performance needs to be viewed through the lens of the triple challenges that Parliament faced around COVID, the fire damage, and a declining budgetary allocation. The next slide, please. Okay. What I'm going to do here, this infographic gives a snapshot view of the business of Parliament, what happened during the 21-22 financial year. Parliament during the year passed 20 bills, posed over 4,000 questions to the executive, made 27 public office recommendations, ratified international agreements, and passed 10 sections 139 interventions. From the NA and NCOP side, from the National Assembly, there were over 84 sittings, 18 debates in the House, a number of written and oral questions to the executive. The NCOP on the other side also had 45 sittings, 33 debates, and posed oral and written questions to the executives, and there were 5 joint sittings. The committees of Parliament, there were 1,217 committee meetings held during the year, with 155 public hearings and 46 oversight visits. Then Parliament also broadened its reach in public participation using multimedia platforms. I don't want to go into the details, but we've used a number of multimedia platforms in order to reach citizenry in terms of our public participation mandate. Next slide, please. We've just made a listing of the bills that Parliament passed during the financial year in a number of key sectors. I'm not going to go through each one of those in detail, but these are key things that Parliament achieved during the financial year. Next slide, please. In terms of high-level performance trends, without repeating anything the AG has said, the only thing we want to point out is that Parliament's institutional performance has been increasing over the years. It used to be in 2014, 15, 2015, 16, quite low, but it has steadily increased such that in the 21-22 financial year, as the AG has already reported, Parliament achieved all of its 12 indicators set in the APP. So we achieved 100% performance. Next slide, please. I think this is more addition, but all I'm trying to show over here is the trajectory of performance trend over a period of time, and this has been increasing steadily. Next slide, please. So in terms of audit outcomes, I don't want to repeat anything the AG has said, except that we are glad that the AG granted us our 8th consecutive clean audit outcome, and through working with us quite closely over the years, we've managed to maintain this. So the relationship with the AG and Parliament has been quite strong over the years. Thank you. This is just showing the same thing. Next slide. This slide is also repeating what the AG has said. The AG already affirmed our areas of internal control and where we came out green. So just please move on to the next slide. So in terms of program performance information, what I'm going to flag here is that as reported to the committee before, we have moved to the measurement of client satisfaction, where we allow members to rate the services of the parliamentary administration. And we've been running that methodology for we ran it through the whole course of the 21-22 financial year. And we are glad the culmination of the annual report that our methodology was affirmed by the AG. Next slide, please. I think just move on. This is just explaining the methodology. So Nick and I may ask us to move on to the further along. Okay, so in terms of, this is a snapshot of the annual performance for the year. So basically, as already indicated, there were 12 indicators in the APP, and each of them related to member satisfaction with specific services in Parliament, from our satisfaction with procedural advice, content advice, legal advice, research, and across the board as listed. The targets that were set for the financial year are listed in the column under target, and the next column is showing our actual performance against that, and everything for all of them it was green. So the summary on the next slide basically tells us this. So we had 12 indicators. Every one of the 12 indicators met or exceeded target, as confirmed by the AG. And we're also glad that it was affirmed that there were no findings on performance information, which is obviously a significant improvement over the years where we did used to have problems, but we've resolved a lot of the issues. Then, as another snapshot, your program one or administration had 2 of those 12 indicators. Both those indicators met their target. This is just saying that the administration is basically a conglomeration of 3 programs, the way it used to be in the 5th Parliament, which included leadership and governance, administration and support, and both indicators in this exceeded their target. The next slide will just is just stating that those 2 indicators in program 1 is the digital service indicator, which looks at our ICT services, and the next indicator in that program is around our facilities management services, or the services around facilities. Both exceeded their target despite the challenging year and the circumstances that we found ourselves during the year. Let's move on to program 2. So program 2 is obviously Parliament's core mandate program, which is based on legislation and oversight. And as would be expected, the majority of performance indicators lie in this program. So in this program, there are 10 indicators, and all 10 of these indicators achieve their targets. And just, I think these were, we can just move on here, and I'll just cover the key, what those indicators are. Cindy, would you maybe move on? So basically, the first indicators which are here are around the frameworks adopted for joint programming, the programs of the NA and the programs of the NCOP. All of those frameworks were done, and there was no nothing spectacular to report here. We achieved everything that we set out to do. Next slide, please. Then the next indicator is around capacity building services provided to members. Once again, we are green here. I think an important thing to mention in terms of performance trend is that a key milestone of the South African Parliamentary Institute was launched on the 9th of December. Also, about 180 members of Parliament and provincial legislatures participated in capacity building programs during the 21-22 financial year. Next slide, please. Can move on. I think I'll just cover the table next. Okay, so the other indicators in this program include research service, member satisfaction with our research service, content advice, procedural advice, legal advice, and committee support. All of the indicators met their targets. In fact, the targets were exceeded in this program. Move on to the next slide, please. I think I've already in the infographic talked about the key things which happened in this program around committee meetings, committee reports, etc. in the infographic earlier. So I think I will pass on this slide and move on to the next. Then the other indicator in this program related to our public participation service. This indicator also met its target, exceeded its target for the financial year. Can move on to the next slide. Honourable members of Parliament, chairpersons of the committee, from this point on, we are going to talk about annual financial statements, and I would like to pass to my colleague, CFO, Ms. Ruby November, to take us through the annual financial statements. Thank you.
Good morning to the Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Speaker, and Honourable members of the Joint Standing Committee, Secretary to Parliament, and my colleagues. It's a pleasure to present to you the annual financial statements of Parliament, an overview, as AG has indicated. This is the revenue side. On the annual appropriation, Parliament budgets of 2.1 billion was reduced by 187 million. The statutory appropriation or direct charges was also reduced by 69 million by Treasury. In the 21-22 financial year, honourable members, the budget reduction was 2.567 million. Then in terms of the revenue generated, this is also to say that there has been an increase, restrictions has been eased, more staff and members has been coming to the office, so there has been more catering. Also in terms of the interest members, there has been, the bank balances has been increased, more monies has been invested, that is compared to your prior year. Then when we look at the expenditure side, so this is the next slide, please. The expenditure compensation of employees, we look here at a variance of 6.7% under COE, and also to indicate, Chairperson, that variance is basically as a result of terminations during the year, as well as filling critical vacancies delays. Then the variance on compensation of members, the overspend there, also as a result of loss of office and exit gratuities, and also to indicate that variance or overspend has been claimed back from Treasury, as this is a direct charge, and they have to date reimbursed Parliament. Also on the goods and services side, you can see the variance there, which is 21.67. We have been working still under a hybrid model. Less physical meetings has happened, less traveling. And as a result of that, there has been a underspending or a saving in that regard. Then with regards to the transfers to political parties, the small variance there is also due to members, some parties that might not have submitted all the queried amounts that we have asked from them, with the result that there has been delayed in settling the transfer to the party unless they have provided satisfactory responses to the queries that has been made. Then under the acquisition of property, plant and equipment, there's also been a variance. And this is on the asset side, due to the national lockdown, there's also been delivery and delays nationally of these equipment from across the board. And that can be attributed to also deliveries that was done nearer to the end of the financial year. Members are just an overview of the expenditure line items. Then the next slide, the next one. I think I just want to go into the permit. The next, yeah, this slide. This is an overview. And this is what AG has highlighted already. That currently the first pie chart basically show Parliament as in a net liability of 1.2 billion. And this is basically due to the post-medical provisions that is made to former members of Parliament and provincial legislatures. Just also to give some background to this, currently there has been various engagements with the National Treasury, the Permit Board, the Deputy Chair is the chairperson of the Permit Board, in order for this liability to be removed from Parliament. Those engagements with Treasury is still underway, and the board as well. But if we look at the second pie chart, should this liability be taken away from Parliament, then this is basically how Parliament will then be in a net asset of 57 million as compared to when we do have the permit. But as we said, honorable members, this is still an engagement that is ongoing. I just needed to state that. The next slide. I think we did address that. Also on the asset side, just to indicate, there has been a decrease of 11.63%. That is to less office and exit gratuities paid over to members in the prior year. Then with regards to prepayments, that relates, honorable members, to your contingencies, advances, and petty cashes. There's also these amount, the 13% that has been increased, that is prepayments that Parliament made to DIRCO, specifically for arranging your international travel. And just to indicate that these lockdown restrictions has been eased as of to date. To the next slide. Here on the financial position in terms of the cash, just also to indicate that Parliament's business is not to invest, but the cash from National Treasury is requested on a monthly basis, and that is through drawings that are submitted. And the 48% increase in the cash equivalent compared to last year can be attributed to some of the investments that's been made, and also during this period of the lockdown. Then the receivable side, we've already indicated that the sales has increased there. And then just to indicate where the AG has alluded to under the asset side, the property and plants, due to the devastating fire that has happened on the 2nd of January, a decision was made that these assets should be impaired. And that is why the current status of our impairment has basically increased compared to prior years. Also to indicate as through the secretary that there are processes underway to enter those buildings to verify whether there is still some of those assets that are in existence, because during the time of this compilation of the AFS, we didn't have any access to those buildings, has been restricted. Then on the heritage assets, that is the same. There has been a decrease of 9%. And again here, some of these assets also had to be impaired due to the fire incident. Then the next slide. Your finance, lease, and liabilities, basically we talk to your phones, your tablets, and modems. The increase is 24%, and this is due to the renewal of the lease contracts. Then with regards to your payables, this is monies that we owe to service providers. There has been an increase, and also to note that invoices has been paid timelessly, and no subsequent findings that relates to your 30-day. So we are on par with paying timelessly service providers. I think we can go to the next slide. I just wanted to highlight also to indicate that the current benefits, the increase of 40%, that is amounts to be paid for the following year for the post-medical and travel benefits and loss of office gratuity, and that is as per the assessment done by the actuaries for Parliament. With regards to the provisions, the legal cases, these provisions, the estimates is normally we based it on the experience. There has been a decrease of 27%, and we say here the decrease is due to the payment or reversal, as no provision or additional provision were made for the 21-22 financial year. Then another matter in terms of fruitless and wasteful expenditure, there has been a case of 52K that relates to the prior year that was disclosed there. This matter relates to, this is a SARS matter where there was an incorrect filing, and subsequently there has been interest claim by SARS. We are in a process to have this reverse. SARS has basically shown the colleagues how to resubmit these, and there is currently an audit that is happening by SARS, and pending the audit outcome, we will be able to indicate whether SARS has basically done away with those interests after we have resubmitted this expenditure due to the delay in payment to SARS. Then on the irregular side, this is the payment where we've indicated due to a timing problem of labor negotiations at the beginning of the financial year, political parties basically received, as per the agreement and letters issued, a 3.2% compared to the 1.5% that was negotiated through the labor structure, and subsequently that resulted in an overpayment. Currently, there are processes underway to recover these over a period as indicated and as agreed to with all the political parties. Then on the operating leases, this is basically the rentals. Honorable members, as you can see, as there has been a decrease of 97%, and that is due to your photocopier machine. As at the end of 31st of March, we had not basically renewed any of those machines, and it would have only been renewed in the 22-23 financial year. Further then, your property, plant and equipment, I think there has been an increase of 38%, and this is also the committed funds and assets, as I've already alluded to, that has not been delivered by year end. With regards to your contingent liabilities in respect of pending claims, the decrease is due to the conclusion of the performance bonus case in favor of Parliament. To the next slide. The conclusion part, this is basically honorable members and chairperson to conclude on our side, to again reiterated that we have achieved a clean audit outcome and 100% despite, as it was indicated, the COVID, the devastated fire in Parliament, and also the declining budget. We are continuing as a Parliament to operate through the virtual and hybrid means. However, in going forward, there will be urgently facility issues that we will be dealing with due to the fire. We will also have to continue to create a sustainable budget. There is the issue of the modernization of the ICT infrastructure that has been in the strategic plan, the continuation of the upskilling of both members of Parliament and parliamentary administration, and that is also in order to improve the oversight function of members of Parliament, and then the business to engage on the re-engineering, and that is to optimize the operations of Parliament. I thank you very much, honorable members and chairperson, for making this presentation. Thank you. We are open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you see me? Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you very much. We invite the Auditor General's office before you can make this presentation so that they can be able to advise us and highlight areas where we might not be able to investigate or to probe as members of Parliament. And I've picked one contradiction related to parties that were overpaid. I think, let me just use the right word, yeah. Or political parties that were overpaid. And when you presented, you said it was not overpayment, but it is political parties that might have failed to account for the monies that were given to them. Can that be clarified? Because now you are saying two contradicting statements with the Auditor General's office. Can that be clarified? Members, I'm inviting hands. I don't see any hands on the platform. Yeah, maybe let's clarify that. I see the hand of Member Harube. Member Harube, you may come in.
Thank you very much, House Chair, and thank you to Parliament for the presentation. I have three questions on my side. The one is, I think this has been raised before, but we obviously continuously look at, and we applaud Parliament for the clean audit and the good financial management that is clearly happening in the institution. But I think, members, we've got to take it a step forward, where it's not just about, a formulaic, whether or not, there were 12 targets and all 12 of them were met. I think we've got to get to a point where we're asking ourselves, are those targets speaking to impact and the substantive role of Parliament? And so my question then becomes, how do we, and of course I understand that can't be necessarily achieved in this year under review, but I would like to hear from the administration, what are the plans that are in place to move away from just the quantitative targets that are in place to more a qualitative assessment of whether is Parliament making the impact that it should? And if so, how do we measure that so that we can make sure that the money that is spent on Parliament's functions actually does what it is meant to do for members of the public and the like? And so I would like to perhaps understand, going forward, how are we going to make a switch? I think it's important. I think members, it's very, very important. Otherwise, we will continuously, meet all our targets and, give each other high fives. But ultimately, we've got to ask ourselves, are we making the impact in the lives of South Africans in the way in which the Constitution envisages the institution to work? Then the second question is around the reduction of the budget. Of course, we understand that there has been a reduction across the board with government departments and the like. I want to perhaps get an understanding from the institution on the deliberations that have been had with Treasury, because of course, due to the new circumstances that we find ourselves in now, I don't think that it's going to be possible for, if Parliament is in the business of trying to rebuild, of trying to find alternative venues to meet and physically be present for the work of Parliament for the next 4 years. I don't think it's going to be possible to experience a reduction. In fact, perhaps we are going to hear, I don't know if the Secretary and the Speaker have had interactions with Treasury ahead of next week, but I just want to understand, are conversations in place about the budget of Parliament and the real term reduction that we are seeing? And then my last question relates to, perhaps this is just for my orientation, the Parliament's financial office. How does that relate to the work that the institution does, and how does that office work with the Auditor General? My understanding is that there's a unit in Parliament, the name escapes me, but I think it might be Parliament's the financial office. But I just want to understand how that unit relates to the work of the AG and the work of the institution, and how is it, do they fulfill an internal audit function? How does that work? Again, it's just for my orientation there at the end. Thank you very much, Chair.
I don't see any hands. Yes, you may continue. You may go ahead and respond.
Chair, my hand is up, but I can come after they've responded.
No, please raise your issue, member. You may raise your questions so that when they respond, there would be no need for us to come back again. We should move on. We are scheduled to conclude our business at 2, but I want us to finish long before that, members. Please come in.
No, thanks, Chair. Chair, we note the presentation by Parliament. So they speak about the triple challenge, COVID, fire, and declining budget. But they're not telling us about the mitigating factors on how they're going to overcome these challenges, because the challenges, yes, they are there, but we can't just be speaking about them and making them as if they are an excuse and not coming up with mitigating factors on how to go about it. Life goes on, and we need to adapt and change the way we do things when circumstances forces us to. So that's the first one. The second one is on Parliament performance.
Emerged for us in terms of how it then became, the negotiations. Firstly,
Chair, I'm not sure what's happening.
What's that, members? I think someone's mic was active. It's fine. They're all muted.
Okay.
Please continue.
Okay, the second one is on Parliament performances. We get a report that 20 bills have been passed for the past financial year, 4,342 questions, of which 433 is oral questions and 3,049 is written questions. But what you don't have here, what you don't see is what is on the pipeline. So how many bills were sent to Parliament for the past financial year? 20 have been passed. Where are the rest? What is the progress of the rest? On questions, the Speaker will confirm that we always write letters to her for her intervention when the executive does not respond to questions. Of late, it's even worse. There's a lot of arrogance, Speaker, that comes from the questions office when we ask questions. We'll send some of those responses to you. But we should be having a view of, yes, there were 4,342 questions that were submitted. Of these questions, how many have been responded to timelessly? And how many were responded to late? And how many were not responded to? So that I have that interest on that one, Chair. And then on the finances, it looks like some of the slides that were presented are not part of this presentation that we have, unless if I've got the old presentation here, which is very problematic because it's a PowerPoint, it's not even a PDF, so it's a mess. But anyway, I'm going to go directly to the conclusion. Before the conclusion, the regular expenditure, again, it's captured there under disclosures. So let's understand where this comes from and how is Parliament addressing this and how is Parliament making sure that we don't find ourselves in this situation again. Now, on the conclusions, Chair, the colleagues are making very ambitious way forward that they're presenting there. I mean, they say we'll deal with urgently with the issue of facility issues presented by the fire. We focus on creating a sustainable budget. How are you going to do that? What is the plan for you to do exactly what this is that you're saying you're doing, and by when? Are you saying these are now the objectives of this financial year, or where do these ones enter? So give us the plan, tell us by when, and tell us by who is implementing these recommendations that we're making. That will be all from my side for now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not see any more hands. I will hand over to you, Secretary to Parliament. You'll decide who responds to what. Then after that, once you're done with your responses, I'll then invite the Speaker to do the final observations. Over to you, Mr. Xolile George.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson. On the issue of the budget and our engagements to improve the reduction of the budget, Madam Speaker would respond on that aspect in terms of executive authority to executive authority engagements on that matter. On the issue of the mitigating measures around risks that have been outlined, indeed, we have prepared the mitigation measures that would assist us in responding towards the identified risks, the points that the acting CFO has raised. All of those matters have now found expression in our annual audit remedial plan action, which has been tabled to the audit committee. So it will be part of our quarterly review reporting as to how far we are in implementing those remedial measures, as well as improving on the preventative ecosystem of managing the risk metrics of the organization. Indeed, on the issue of the qualitative shift that we would like to see in the work we do, in my opening remarks, Honorable Chairperson, I did raise that our work for this term, the 6th Parliament, we are now reporting on the 4th leg of the 5-year term. And if you notice our report, it is focusing primarily on the transactional element of reporting on strategy. You would see on how we also characterize our APP as a function of execution. They are predominantly focusing on the quantitative aspect of our work, meaning the input orientation of what we do, number of meetings held, number of committee minutes recorded, number of minutes distributed. That is a contribution to an ingredient to the work we need to do. What we need is to look at how our organizational strategy responds to the transformative agents of the institution of Parliament, what its impact is in relation to its agency as an apex and premier institution in our system of governance. So part of the 5-year priorities that says we need to improve on oversight. We need to extract accountability from the executive. How do we measure that? How do we measure on those commitments if we are now closing year 4? And all of those you could only realize if you are able to make a qualitative shift to the outcomes and impacts that Honorable Kwahube has raised around this matter. And that will be a function of us visiting the fundamentals of our organizational strategy plan and how our balance scorecard would help us respond. So essentially that was my thesis earlier on when I raised on this matter. And as we go forward, Chairperson, our next generation APP will begin to speak to this matter. And if I had time, I will take to the members on some of the thinking that I have begun to infuse into the team, as it would help us to revisit those matters. So at the points that have been raised by honorable members to say, yes, we can see there's 12 bills that have been passed in the year under review. What are those bills? How do they respond to the social transformation aspects that is envisaged in the National Development Plan? Are we making that impact as Parliament in terms of enabling the executive to do its work? And if it does its work, what is the loophole? What is the loop feedback that we would want to see when we shall have exercise oversight? What is the responsiveness of the executive to fix the issues that Parliament would have pointed out in the recommendations? Auditor General raised the matter in the morning about the improvement, the value add, if they look at the APP of a department, and does it allow for Parliament's portfolio committee on water affairs, as an example, to say this is what the portfolio committee raised to be indicated before the executive authority of the department signs that matter. So that there is a full scope review that measures outcomes and measures impact. And that would be what we will be doing, Chairperson. I would like the Secretary to the committee to flight the strategy review elements so that I can highlight maybe in 5 minutes what we intend doing, so that we could give the committee a sense of the fundamental reorientation we would want to implement around review of strategy, review of organizational contracting, and also review of the various components of the core business of Parliament, how it must assist members to be assured that the work they do is making the impacts that are required in terms of the transformation that we would like to see in society as influenced by the work of Parliament. So if the Secretariat can just highlight this input that I want to share. I don't have sharing rights this side, and perhaps you could just highlight Cindy and flag that, and I will speak to it in 5 minutes. I think there's a disconnect there, Chairperson, from our internal communication. My sincere apology on that. Perhaps if we were to be given sharing rights, we could be able to speak to the aspects that I wanted to highlight in response to the shifts members wants to see. In the meantime, whilst we are fixing the matter, with your permission, Chairperson, I would like to ask the CFO to respond on the clarity of the political party funding, the question that the Chairperson raised earlier on. In the meantime, and perhaps with your permission, maybe Madam Speaker would be able to respond to the matter of conversations between Parliament and Treasury.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I don't know
Permission
if
granted.
you are granting me permission to proceed.
Permission granted. Permission granted.
Thank
Madam
you.
Speaker.
Thank you very much, co-chairs. Thank you. Thank you, co-chairs and honorable members. Honorable members, I'm happy to report that, yes, we have had interaction with the Minister of Finance. It wasn't just a meeting of the two executive members. We were accompanied by management of both Parliament and the National Treasury. The chairperson of the NCOP formed part of the delegation, so the delegation was led by the two of us. Chairpersons, I think the most important issue which came out of the meeting is a commitment which was displayed by the Minister of Finance to assist Parliament. He was particularly very sympathetic and alive to the fact that over the years, there's been an erosion of the baseline of our budget as Parliament. However, a decision was then taken that even to deal with that particular issue, even though this should be attended to, Minister indicated that perhaps we should look into possibilities of resolving this issue over a period of time. So it's not a matter which can be dealt with once off by granting us, for instance, that plus minus 500 million amount, which would basically assist to deal with the issue of this erosion of the baseline of our budget. One of the issues which we discussed thoroughly with the minister is the the whole issue of the fire in Parliament, how it has impacted negatively on us, and how it will continue to impact negatively in the coming years, and how we believe National Treasury should come in and give a hand to the process of restoration of Parliament. We had a good engagement on the matter, and what was agreed on is that perhaps this should be a separate project. We were proposing, for instance, on our side, that we would like to have a trilateral arrangement of a project steering committee, which would consist of Parliament, DPWI, and National Treasury, so that National Treasury can monitor as well the spending of the finances which are going to be allocated for this purpose. Honorable members, we agreed with the minister that perhaps the transfer payment for this particular purpose should be given to Parliament, so that Parliament at the end of everything accounts for the spending of this allocation for the refurbishment of its institution. Now, we also agreed that obviously we would have to look at a procurement system which will allow for on-time spending of the money allocated for this, but a procurement system which will ensure that it has proper checks and balances as we move forward on the matter. We also discussed, honorable members, a matter which is troubling us, which is the fact that the transfer of funding to political parties is done from Parliament and is done from the allocation of Parliament. And we had definite proposals to National Treasury on this matter, and that is perhaps this allocation, this transfer should be done directly from the side of National Treasury. The response of the minister was that perhaps they as National Treasury should look into possibilities of engaging the IEC, so that the IEC assumes the responsibility as an entity which deals with different political parties with regards to elections and so on, so that the IEC takes charge of the transfer funding to political parties. Well, this is a matter I would not want to talk to, but which I believe the minister has committed to engage the IEC on and find a way forward on the matter. Of course, he did indicate that, honorable members, once that happens, obviously, whatever the function, if it is to be done by the IEC, it would have to be followed by the money, which gave me an impression that the money which we are transferring to political parties may not necessarily be money which is meant to be spent by Parliament, but money which probably would have been ring-fenced for allocation to political parties. This is a matter we are still engaging on. Honorable members, we did indicate to the minister that the cost of restoring Parliament may take us up to 2.2 billion, including furnishings and IT systems. For now, the figure which we have, which has been given to us approximately, there's an indication that we may actually spend plus minus 300 million for the restoration of the old assembly building, and we may spend about 1.8, 1.9 for the restoration of the new assembly building. Honorable members, this would mean that the amount we would require for the restoration of Parliament itself as it is now would be about plus minus 1.3 billion. But if you then include your furniture, your IT systems, etc., it may as well take us up to 2.2 billion, according to the estimations which we have been given by the team from KUHA, but also by our own team. Which then means, honorable members, the idea which we had in Parliament initially of putting up a temporary structure in the form of a modular structure. You'll recall that earlier on when we were still, reeling from this tragedy of having had our building completely destroyed by the fire, one of the things we proposed to you at these meetings was that we are seriously considering putting up a modular structure within the precincts of Parliament, which we can utilize for the next couple of years whilst the restoration of Parliament is being done. But when we did the calculations, we discovered that, in fact, the money which we would spend on the modular structure is money which we could spend on the restoration, for instance, of the old assembly building, because it is the same, more or less the same amount of money. Hence the decision from our side, together with National Treasury, that we may as well look into possibilities of restoring Parliament, because anyway, even as some parties are raising the matter of movement of Parliament to Pretoria, etc., that is not the item on the agenda right now, because it doesn't matter where you move Parliament. Even if you were to move it in the Eastern Cape or even in Natal and say, KwaZulu-Natal, and say this is where you'd want to have your new Parliament. But actually, we still have an obligation in terms of SARA to renovate the Parliament, to restore the current building of Parliament. So the issue of restoration of Parliament, of that building, has become a very urgent matter right now. And this is an option which we are opting to take. Now, as I've said, obviously the funds will then be transferred to Parliament, but of course we committed that we would like to have a trilateral arrangement ourselves, PWI and National Treasury being responsible for driving that process. I think we have, honorable members, just to say that even though we are not yet certain what will be allocated to us next week through the MTPPS process, but there is some commitment from the minister that there will be some allocation given to us. And of course, there will be expectation that that allocation will be spent between now and the end of the financial year. And that money would be money which will be ring-fenced squarely for the restoration of Parliament. So I thought I should just indicate that, honorable members, we're not sure as yet, but the meeting was a very positive meeting. It was very, very constructive, and we believe that it is a meeting which will yield positive results. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Mr. George?
Thank you very much, Honorable. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I would ask the acting CFO to clarify the matter of political party funding. And maybe before she does that, I can just reinforce the response that Madam Speaker has indicated on the positive outcome of the meeting with regards to the unforeseen and urgent expenditure that has been occasioned by the fire incident, we made submission to Treasury in terms of unavoidable expenditure. Although we could not receive the amount we requested, we have nevertheless received an indication that they will allocate us an amount of 118 million rand out of the total request we made to help us to respond to the issues we presented to the committee in July, as well as in September, around the preparations for the medium-term budget policy statement, preparations for the SONA and related budget speech debates for next year, as well as the budget presentation. Preparations for members' offices that we shared in July and August. And we believe that such an amount would help us to go a long way to deal with the restorative aspect of our work, including the enhancement of the digital infrastructure. That will be amount to help us sail through until March around unforeseen expenditure. So thank you very much on that point. And if the acting CFO can clarify that part, and hopefully I can go back to the question we have parked for the forward-looking aspect of the strategy. Acting CFO. Acting CFO. Maybe what she's challenged there, may I request Secretariat to flight the input I wanted to cover on the forward-looking of our organizational reporting. Can you flight that now?
Good afternoon, members. Secretary, I'm not sure, Cindy's having difficulties. So it's Cindy, the committee secretary, speaking now. I'm not sure which presentation it is that you would like us to share.
Cindy, can you please share the hosting rights?
I have shared with the section. I've shared the hosting rights with the secretary.
Share it also
Okay,
with Cindy.
Secretary.
Share it with Cindy in my office.
Secretary, Cindy is disconnected. Okay,
I'm now
can
with
Cindy Bali share with me, then I will be able to flight. I'm ready to flight.
Okay.
Okay, I've done so.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. In response to the reflection of members on how are we improving our operational reporting to strategic reporting in the organization, we have looked at our work since the 6th Parliament, wherein about 5 priorities were outlined that anchor the work of Parliament for this period. So at the end of 2024, Parliament will be required to respond to the report that will then be handed over to the 7th Parliament, essentially covering these 5 areas: the commitment to strengthen oversight and accountability, the commitment to enhance public involvement, deepening engagement in international fora, strengthening corporate governance, and strengthening legislative capacity. These were commitments of 2019 made by Parliament. And when you look at our report as we sit, we are now finishing year 4 of the 5-year priority outlook in the parliamentary strategy. Around aspect of strengthening oversight, are we able to respond to the question, have we strengthened oversight and accountability? If the answer is yes, what informs us to say so? If the answer is no, what informs us to say so? So in an infrastructure of reporting that we are unable to make a determinative answer to that question, it means it points to the fundamental weakness on how we have structured our own approach on reporting as administration to help members to be able to say confidently, we think our work of oversight, we have robustly engaged, and this is what it is yielding out there from an outcome and an impact. Next slide. Again, if you look at Honorable Chairperson and members, the strategy map of the 6th Parliament, at the level of outcome, this is what we desire in 2024, but ultimately contribute to improvement concretely in the conditions of tackling the contradictions of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. So the work we do around responsiveness and accountability improvement, the improvement of oversight, of a budget, of a performance of the executive must feed into the outcomes. And so far, when you look at how we are reporting, the current weakness of our current reporting system is that it focuses more on the input aspect of the work. Very necessary to measure, but it is part of contributing to the bigger commitment to measure performance. So it's inputs around number of meetings, number of committee reports, which must then be measured further in terms of how the activities of members having received the advice feeds into those areas. So we've got to spend more time in terms of our shift that we want to see, Chairperson, to improve towards the outcome orientation of our work. So that the outputs that come help Parliament to achieve the outcomes and be able to measure how its work responds to greater issues out there. So that's the layer we will be focusing on. Next slide. In terms of the guiding impacts of our work, to link to these 6 priorities that have been outlined in terms of our international dimension of our work, the informants thereof at a national level, how they help us to respond to monitoring the work of the executive in terms of the medium-term strategic framework of 2019-2024. Next slide. On this area, we are envisaging, Honorable Chairperson, to introduce a multi-layered approach to managing how we identify the priorities and how those strategies help us to align 3 interdependent areas: the outlook of the strategy, the approach to execution of that, the monitoring and evaluation, as well as report and feedback along those areas. So we will be looking at a multi-tiered approach so that at the level of Parliament's institution, we've got a clear, balanced scorecard that will help Parliament to make a statement of commitment to society, what it will do in line with its own mandate. And then we go to each house, the National Assembly, the NCOP, to have a second tier 2 scorecard balance in terms of each of the houses. And then we go to committee levels and we go to the service itself, where we are currently reporting at a tier level the satisfaction of members. We will still maintain that, but it will be tiered correctly to feed to the bigger picture at a division level, at a unit level, and linked to an individual level. Next slide. We would also look at how we ensure that we move from the suboptimal execution of our work, as we have reported, to make sure that our reporting systems links all these elements that are indicated into these quadrants, to make sure that our execution helps us to improve the discipline of reporting and then build the confidence of being assured that our work indeed responds to the core mandate of Parliament. Next slide. This is what technically will be done in terms of chiseling out those commitments. At the core of this is a commitment to cascade, a commitment to make sure that we mainstream right across. Next slide. How we will then align the capabilities, Honorable Chairperson, over the next 6 months, we'll be looking at finalizing our operating model and also look at alignment of our own structures, and also look at revamping the governance charter so that robustly committees are able to monitor what we do as administration in service of the work of the institution. Next slide. This is what collaboration would look like when we have achieved it, to make sure that across all the 4 quadrants, there's greater alignment, there's greater collaboration of our work. The reporting arrangements are quite ironed out, and the interdependencies identified, and the contracting of each of the divisions feeds to the broader outlook of the reports that we produce around our work. Next slide. At the level of budget alignment, we will be looking at those areas and also embed the consistent approach to alignment and cost structure reduction, and also clear linkages of votes in line with the core mandates on those pillars. Next slide. Also at the level of the internal administration, revamping of the culture, these are the issues we will be focusing on, especially on introducing the employee value added component of contracting, as well as balancing it with the employer value proposition. All of those areas must respond to these 4 components in line with our contracting regime as the organization, to improve quality of expertise and quality of commitment in the organization. Next slide. This will be also the work we'll be doing on monitoring and evaluation, to make sure that at the level of monitoring, it helps us respond to the work of the various committees, the work of the various houses, and culminating to the final report of Parliament as an institution, leading to the outcomes that we said we would like to start measuring progressively. Next slide. So in terms of the timelines of doing what we say we will be doing, Honorable Chairperson and members, we envisage that we will be doing this work in this month. We couldn't commit to the month of October owing to a number of areas as originally planned. We would, however, be looking at that in terms of November, and then follow in these timelines right up until the validation of our work at the level of NA and NCOP, and also validation of the work by the executive authority before the end of the financial year in March. And hopefully we will be able to table an APP that begins to make the qualitative shift that we are talking about in terms of gradually introducing the improvements in the system, so that when committees carry out an oversight to the Eastern Cape, when committees goes to Yakasfontein Dam, where there's a dam spillage, and the work has been done there, or in KZN floods, how do we then have a tracking mechanism that says, this is what members have picked up, this is how the committee will do that work, and how we will then measure the responsiveness of the executive to implementing those remedial measures. And also when Parliament goes to the people, how do we then feed back so that we improve the contracting aspect of society in terms of the public, and how it builds to the confidence they have in the system of Parliament to be the main center of execution of the contribution to their quality of life and responsiveness of government to the issues that they face. So that will be a full feedback on how we will be improving. It will not be an easy issue because it requires a broad section of consultation, and we commit to striving towards that, and hopefully we have a building stack of how the organization would shift towards qualitative measurements of its own scorecard, so that when laws are passed, we don't have a situation where we only say 12 bills were passed. What is the meaning of those bills in terms of transformative agents of Parliament? How many fall into the cluster of social transformation? And what is it helping the executive to do in terms of commitments in the National Development Plan? Are we making progress? And how do we measure that in terms of the quality of life of citizens, or responsiveness on issues of the various sector departments that are clustered around safety and security, around economic cluster, around social cluster, or around areas of economic development and so on. So that will be the attempt, Chairperson, to introduce the shift, and we will be able to come back to the committee at different stages in line with this timeline agenda. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Quite detailed. We'll note it as work in progress. Thank you very much for the responses. I don't see any further hands. I see the hand of Honorable Becky Hadebe. I'm not sure after you've given us this commitment, would you still want to speak? Umpile, I'm not sure whether this is the legacy hand or you still have something to raise.
No, it's a new hand, Chair.
Okay, fine. Becky Hadebe will go in and then you will come in.
No, thank you, Chairperson. I think we have to appreciate, good morning, everyone on the platform. We have to appreciate the report, in particular the annual report which was presented this morning, that the Parliament continues to be a very responsible custodian of the resources of the people of South Africa in coming to executing its job. So I think that they can be able to account so well that there's minimal under expenditure, there's also reasonable over expenditure on certain items. I think that one must be appreciated. Also appreciate the Speaker that at least now on the issue of the Parliament fire, there's some sort of a way forward which is getting clearer by day. I'm very happy that the issue of the modular structure is being set aside, because basically what is going to happen is that it was going to, the term it's going to set up, whatever it might be, it's almost going to be similar with the restoration of Parliament. So I'm very happy that it is still the responsible and the use of the financial resources of the people of South Africa. But what is also very important is that the commitment to the adherence of the laws of the country, that one of the issue of that the heritage buildings must be restored to their glory, so that when moving forward, the history of the people of South Africa is not lost. So I'm very happy with that one. But also on the issue of the agreement with the Minister of Finance and the trilateral type of arrangement which is going to be made between Parliament plus the Department of Public Works plus Treasury. I think that in the last meeting, we're very clear that when they deal with that, we'll expect the Parliament and the administration to come and give us an implementation plan. Because we said we wanted a real-time audit. I didn't hear anything being mentioned about roping in the Office of the Auditor General, so that when they start with the work, the Office of the Auditor General is there side by side with them, so that it can give guidance when necessary. Because I think that by the fact that they've agreed that the money will rest in the Parliament account, it means that we cannot afford a situation whereby these good reports, 8 years reports of Parliament can be compromised because of the poor management of this mega project. I don't think Parliament has ever managed such a big project like this one of 2.2 billion rand. So I think that they must give commitment that the Office of the Auditor General will be side by side with them as they meet the three, that is Treasury, Department of Public Works plus Parliament. Again, Chairperson, I really appreciate the work done. And then we expect that in the next week, when they come and give us the revised budget and the implementation plan, I think that there will be more flesh on this issue so that we'll be able to engage thoroughly. Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Yes.
Chair.
You are on the platform, Member Mpile.
Okay, thanks. No, once again, thank you, Chair, except that Secretary of Parliament must not come and abuse us and bring things that are not in the agenda here. But my question is to the Speaker, Honourable Speaker, Chair. I'm not sure if I heard her correctly that there's a decision that has been taken to restore Parliament. And if that is the case, what's going to happen to the discussions around the move of Parliament to Pretoria? Has the decision been made that it's definitely not going to happen. And also, if the decision is that we are restoring Parliament, where was that decision taken? I'm just battling with those, Chair. If I can get clear clarity from the Honourable Speaker, I'll appreciate. Thank you.
Those were the two follow-up questions. Can we quickly deal with them? Speaker, are you still in the platform?
Yes, yes, I am here. Honorable Chairperson. Thanks, Honorable Mpile Mautwe. I thought I clarified the matter, and that is, honorable members. When we had taken a decision to build a modular structure, in the main, it had to do with providing a temporary shelter for Parliament from which we can operate from, rather than being in the Woodwood chamber. However, honorable members, I mean, we continue to engage with different stakeholders, with different entities for purposes of getting the best advice on the way forward. What we have discovered, Honorable Mpile, is that the money we would have spent on building a modular structure is more or less the same amount we would spend in restoration of, for instance, the old assembly building. If you look at the total amount of money we would spend in restoring Parliament, it is an amount of money we could easily spend on, no, I'm making a mistake, I'm sorry. The figures we have at hand are plus minus 1.2 for restoration of Parliament. And your question is, where was the decision taken? Obviously, no decision has been taken other than the fact that whether we take a decision to move Parliament to another city tomorrow, we still as Parliament have an obligation to rebuild or to restore the current building of Parliament. In other words, even if we were to say we are moving to Pretoria or even to KwaZulu-Natal tomorrow and spend money on building infrastructure of Parliament, we still have an obligation to restore the current building of Parliament. In other words, the ruins of Parliament as they are right now, in terms of SARA, in terms of the Heritage Site, whatever act, we still have an obligation to rebuild those ruins. And as we move forward to build a new structure of Parliament, wherever, we would still, in other words, we would still have to spend money on building a new Parliament, but also on rebuilding and restoring the current infrastructure of Parliament. So you still have to make sure that you do not leave Parliament in its current state, in ruins. You still have to restore, you still have to rebuild. As you talk movement of Parliament, that is if a decision is taken to move Parliament to another city. In other words, honorable members, the little money that we are going to be getting now from National Treasury, obviously we have an obligation to spend it on restoration of Parliament, whilst the other debates are ongoing as to whether you want to keep Parliament in Cape Town or not, or you want to move Parliament. But we feel very strongly, and this is the case we presented to National Treasury, that right now, as things stand, that the cost of the modular structure we would have built for temporary purposes, right, would really be the exact amount we would spend on restoring the old assembly building. So there is really, we should prioritize things. There's an urgent need, whether we like it or not, to restore the old assembly and the National Assembly whilst the debates continue on whether you want to move parliament or not. So Honorable Mawudwe, that is really where we are. So that debate is not complete, but definitely on our part, having weighed all the options, having looked at what it would cost even for that modular structure, we decided that we're going ahead with restoring parliament, because anyway, we have an obligation to do so, even if we were to take a decision to move. I hope you've understood me, honorable members. Thank you. Chair, are you here?
Are we? Yes, I'm there. Okay, thank you very much. Let me just check on the portal. No, there are no more hands. It's work in progress, where we won't be able to achieve anything in one day, but we thank you for the comprehensive reports and also for being open to engagement. Members, if there's any question that you feel that it was not adequately responded to, you can do that in writing. Yes, you can do that directly to the Speaker's office in writing, but via Cindy, so that we can record the questions. Thank you very much, Speaker and the Secretary to Parliament. I think we need to move now to the next item. Cindy, let's see what's on the agenda item. We are doing well in terms of time. If we are adopting reports and minutes, Cindy, do we have the required quorum?
Yes, we do, Chairperson. We've got sufficient members from the Ethiopian NA. And if you want to, we may now excuse Parliament's delegation.
Okay, Parliament's delegation and the Speaker, you are excused. Thank you very much.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you. Let's just quickly, in less than 10 minutes, let's deal with what is remaining. Are you in a position to flag the minutes of the 23rd of September?
Chair, can you see the report? I'll flag the minutes.
Is the agenda on my screen?
Do you see the minutes now?
No, the agenda, still the agenda on my screen. I'm not sure. In other members' screens, what do they see?
I'm starting from
I don't see anything now. Okay, sure.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. Members, can we check first attendance? These are the minutes of the 23rd of September. Attendance present. I think we've agreed, Cindy, that we don't use the words absent. Because I'm sure there's no member who will just deliberately sit and not attend to the parliamentary responsibilities. I think we've agreed in one of our meetings that we don't use that word absent.
Yes, Chair. Unfortunately, I think I explained in an email as well. Unfortunately, that's how the structure of the minutes is, and also our attendance registers. Unfortunately, it is required that a member who has not submitted an apology is recorded as absent.
Okay, let's move on.
Page 1.
There's a long list of attendees, Chair, and then the minutes proper start on page 6.
I'm not sure if members also had an opportunity to go through the minutes. If so, we can just go directly to observations and recommendations. I'm seeking your permission, members.
Agreed, Chair.
Okay.
That is the end of the set of minutes, Chair.
Just go up. Yeah, maybe. What comes before way forward? Let's see.
It's still part of our discussion, Chair.
Okay. Okay. I think maybe let's move for the adoption of the minutes, and hopefully in the next week the department and parliament will be ready to come and give us an updated report, because I think from that date to now a lot has happened. So can I get a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the minutes, with an understanding that in our next meeting we will be provided with more information.
I so moves, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can we move? Those are the only set of minutes that we have, Cindy.
Yes, Chair. I'm going to share the report.
The
now.
report.
Chair, with this report, I yesterday realized that I never shared it with members after it was adopted, after it was drafted in September. I'm not sure where the glitch came in. So I shared it with members yesterday. If that was too short a time for members to go through it, we can still adopt it next week. But if members have had opportunity to go through it, we can go ahead. The oversight was on my part. I don't know where the glitch came in that it was never sent.
Okay, before we take that decision, let's go first to the observations and recommendations. Because this will guide us to understand what was dominant in the discussions. It was about appointment of secretary to parliament, which was done. The blueprint around the implementation of changes towards ensuring that Parliament's overall performance in respect of public participation, oversight, lawmaking. I think these are part of the things that we've just discussed now in today's meeting.
organizational realignment. Well, I think the Secretary to Parliament is up to speed, is equal to the task. Member Mauto was even saying that is confusing us. So I have no doubt. I think he's up to speed. He's doing his level best. Don't move too fast, Cindy. Go back again to that one. Go back there. Okay. Just go up just a little. The budget allocation in terms of making sure that our oversight work improves. We note that, but it's part of the discussions that we had earlier on. The liability of permit as well is part of what we've just discussed now. Go up again. The protection service, we were quite on this matter, members. Maybe we take this one, Cindy, we prioritize this one. We were quite about this. Let's prioritize this. Let's put this as a priority. Protection service. Oh, but then there's a commitment that vacancies will be filled early 2022, 2023, 2024.
Yes.
Yeah, I think out of the earlier discussions, this is the only matter that we did not focus on. Have they provided us with responses as recommended?
Not yet, not on these recommendations because they are still to be tabled and adopted by the House Chair. By the House.
Okay, when are we taking
and the NCOP?
Okay. I think critical vacancies as well. The Chief Financial Officer and the Head of Parliamentary Protection Service. Yeah, those are the two critical vacancies that they still have to respond on. Okay, go up. Quarterly updates, definitely, we have started. We'll make sure that we keep track of that. We don't lose the quarterly updates and progress. Okay. Parliament's budget allocation, Speaker tried to respond on that, but I still did not get a clear indication as to whether Treasury is considering to allocate our budget and recognize us as independent arm of state. I'm not sure if the Treasury has agreed to that. I'm not sure, but Speaker tried to respond on this. The Parliamentary Protection Service comes back again. Okay. Everything that has got to do with Parliamentary Protection Service, Cindy, put it in one section. We don't have to have it there and then it comes back again here. Try to put it in one section.
I will do so, Chair, but the report is structured with part C.
Oh, it's not on the same.
Observation, yes.
Okay.
And then part
Okay.
D has the recommendation. Yes, Chair.
Okay, that's fine. Members, there was a suggestion earlier on that the report was not circulated, but I just wanted us to quickly go through what dominated the report and the discussions. I'm not sure if we'll still want to consider referring the report back. Remember, if we do that, then it will delay the tabling in the House. Are there issues that members feel that they would still want to go and consult? If we don't do that, then we will not be able to adopt the report. But I would want to persuade you to agree to the report. And if there are matters that members would still want to be clarified on, we can still do that between now and the date that will be allocated for us to table the report. We should be mindful of the fact that if we don't use this opportunity, very soon Parliament will be going on recess. And it means the next time we engage on this report, it will be around next year, March. So I'll leave that to you members to decide. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm not getting any response. Can we then, members, then agree that we approve and can we agree that we adopt the report? Can I get a mover for the approval of the report?
I move, Chair, for the adoption of the report, Kaiso.
Thank you very much, Member Kaiso. Can we get a seconder? Can we get a seconder, members, for the approval of the report? Kaiso has moved for the approval. Can we get a seconder? Are we having connectivity problems, or is there silent protest or resistance? Member Hadebe, are you on the platform? Member Khai, Member Moletani.
Let the report be approved.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. The report then will be then tabled in the House. A date and time will be communicated to you members. Thank you very much. Cindy, is there anything that we're leaving behind?
No, Chairperson, that's the end of our agenda.
Okay. Having said that, thank you very much, members.
It's almost 11 o'clock. We saved 2 hours. So thank you very much, members, for being effective and efficient.
Members, I think we have lost the chairperson.
Cindy, I think the chairperson was closing the meeting, so we would like to thank very much. Bye.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.